Okay, in this lesson, we are going to be looking at land use zones um, in urban areas. Okay, so without wasting so much time, let's see land uses. Within urban areas, find out that land use in towns and cities, usually you have use for leisure and recreation, which may include open space, parks, which are built facilities such as sports centers. We also have residential. We have land use for transport. We have land use for business and commerce. We have land use for industry. So generally, land is used within an urban area for a lot of reasons, and but these are the basic land uses. Now, these land use help to divide the urban area into different zones. Now, as we looked at in our lesson 3, where we look at urban land use models, you find out that as you move away from the center of the city, which is the CBD, you move towards the rural urban fringes, you find out that the type of buildings, the land use also changes. So that's what we're going to be looking at. Now, as you're moving out, the first part of where you move from the city center is the CBD. Now, the CBD is the Central Business District, and what is done there majorly is that is the city center is where you have most businesses and commerce is located. So that's where you also have most of the offices are found. Now, what is the characteristics of a CBD? Now, if you look at this image, you should be able to pick out a lot of characteristics of a CBD. Now, first, they have high multi-story buildings. Two, it is expensive, so highly expensive land value. Three, they have a lot of department stores or specialty shops like jewelries. Then that's where you have shopping malls and pedestrian lane. You can see a lot of people walking there. Now, because it's the city center, you easily find out that development start from them moving outward. So you can have cultural, historical buildings, museums, and castles at the middle. Now, offices, banks, administrative, town hall, business sectors are found within the CBD. You have bus and railway stations are found within the CBD. Within the CBD, you can easily get multi-story car parks. Now, these are major characteristics of a CBD. Now, however, the CBD is located in the center because it is one, it is a central location for roads. So all roads within the town converge at the CBD, and also is the most accessible location for workers, accessible to most people for shop and businesses. Now, some of the reasons why there are high-rise building in the CBD is because the land is expensive, so it is just a small area, so you need to manage it well. So it is only a small area. There is pressure on land use to lots of competing land users. The land has a very high value and more economical way of using land. So it's more economical to use land. That's why you have high-rise buildings there. Okay, so these are the major features of a CBD, and once in IGCSE questions, they won't ask you anything about CBD outside this content here. Now, after you leave the CBD, the next area you meet is the transition zones where you have factories and industry areas. Now, you find out that during the Industrial Revolution in some MEDCs like the USA and UK, large factories were built around the center of the city, and factories were built as close as possible to the CBD, but with enough space now for what? For expansion. So the space are needed for expansion. Space for expansion. Also, you find out that it's usually next to canals and railways to transport materials. It's also next to rivers for cooling, power source, or waste disposal. Now, it's next to land where lots of workers could live. Now, this is why you have factories there. Next, this area is quite really very important, especially with your paper 2. Why residential areas? So immediately after the CBD, we move to industries. After industries, we now move to residential area. Now, this residential area, it depends on the model we are looking at. If it is an MEDC, you now have low class, middle class, then high class. But if it's an LEDC, you have high class residential first, then you have middle class, then you have low class. So as you move outward a city before you get into the rural urban fringes. Now, low class residential, which is also known as the inner city housing. Now, works are needed for industry. So workers are needed, sorry, it should be workers needed for industries. So workers move close to industrial areas from rural areas. Therefore, the need for low cost housing. So this low cost housing are found close to the industries. So low cost close to the industries in terms of in MEDC cities. Now, due to little public and private transport at that time, so in recent years, people have improved this housing. So they tend to stay close to their workplace because of poor transport network at that time. So, but presently there's a good transport network, so you can actually stay at the outskirts of the city and still use rails and canals to get to work within the shortest possible time. Now, we also have the middle class residential, which is the interwar period. Now, due to growth of public transport, train, and increase in private cars, this meant people could work in the CBD but live further out of the city, develop around the inner city areas. Then we have the high class residential. So, as cities have expanded further due to urban sprawl, which we'll look at again in a subsequent lesson, in modern times, larger detached housing has been built on the land which is furthest away from the CBD, where there is space for it stretching out to the rural urban fringes. Now, in IG, they will now give you images such as this and ask you to explain or give some of the characteristics of low class housing, identify it, and give some of the features. Now, this is a low class housing which is close to the industrial areas. Now, some of the features you can see here is that it is a low class house. First, two, it has old buildings. Three, it is tightly packed. Four, you find that it is cheaper. And five, it is a terraced apartment, so there is no, it's joined together. Now, while in a middle class, it's usually um, a semi-detached apartment, so semi-detached, where you can have two people living in a single flat. Like here now in this particular building, is semi-detached. You can have one family here, and you can have another family here. So it's like a two flats joined together, but it is not terrace because you can see there is a space here. Then you can have the next building here. That's a middle class residential. Now, more it's new buildings. There is more space, not like this. It is quite expensive. You can see presence of garden here. So presence of garden and few parking and little shopping. But here there is no space to park at all. There is no garden. You can see it. Now we have the high class residential. Now in high class residential, you have more new buildings. There are more space. It is detached, that it's only you living in your house. You can even fence it, unique. It is really really expensive. You can have presence of gardens, uh there's parking space, you can go for shopping. So these are just the features, so you should be able to identify them and give some characteristics, features of these residential areas. Now, immediately we leave the residential areas, we will now move to the rural urban fringes. Now, a rural urban fringe is also known as the zone of transition, where you move from an urban area, zone of transition from an urban area to rural area. So if you look at this diagram here, so it's a border of a city or countryside. If you are asking an exam, what is a rural urban fringe? It's the border of a city or a countryside. Now, if you look at this is the countryside. Why this is the city. Now, if you look at when we treated the hierarchy of a settlement, And I told you guys that hamlet, village, dispersed settlements are usually within the rural areas. Then conurbation, cities, towns are usually found within the urban area. So the point where the urban area and the rural area come in contact at the edge of the city is referred to as the rural urban fringes. So it has its own features. So land uses within the rural urban fringe. What do they use the land for that part for? Is for agriculture. You can have things like road, bypass, ring roads there. You have industrial estates can be built there. Retail park, airports, new housing are found largely within the rural urban fringes. Now, reasons why the rural urban fringe is being developed. Now, why will people decide to live within the rural urban fringes? Now, the reason is one is to provide housing for industries and business because the land there is usually cheap. Now, land is cheap, and because land is cheap, you can buy a whole lot of a large piece, which will give you more space. Now, developing the rural urban fringe, you develop it for schools, hospitals, shopping malls can be there, to create employment, to boost the local economy. So these are the reasons why rural urban fringe is being developed. First, any area is developed for jobs, employment. You develop for housing, industries, for schools. That will help to boost the economy. Lots of free spaces there. Land is cheap. Now, why some shops and services are being located in shopping malls in the rural urban fringes? So usually shopping malls are now moving from the city centers to rural urban fringes. Now, why will they move? Why will they be located in the rural urban fringe? Is because it has a cheaper land value. Now, it can afford land to build a bigger store. Now, with room for parking, easier road access will help to prevent congestion within the CBD. So they tend to move there. Now, it helps to attract customers from town and rural areas. And it has more pleasant environmental scenery than just being in the city center. So at that point, it gives room for people coming from the city and people coming from the rural areas. They can actually go there for their shopping. Now, what is the impact of development of this rural urban fringe? It has a lot of impact. It affects both the natural environment and people. Now, some of the impact is loss of farming because that area will be used for farming earlier, but now it has been constructed. You have shopping malls, you have industries there, you have housing systems there. So it will lead to loss of farmland, obviously then loss of jobs for the farmers. Now it increase in population which result in suburbanization of the villages. Now, it increased competition for land between industries and agricultural purposes. Now, loss of natural reserve for wildlife. So, obviously, their habitat will be destroyed, which will now definitely affect the food chain also. It increase in traffic will lead to accident because the number of people living there now has increased. So traffic will also increase with time. Now, sewage work and disposal cause land and water pollution from people that are living there now. So the next thing we'll look at is reason why people move to rural urban fringe. Why will people leave the city center and decide to live in a rural urban fringe zone? Now, one is because of development in transport, so people can commute, people can move to work from the rural urban fringes. Rural urban fringe is quiet and it's less noisy, and there's less traffic congestion. Rural urban fringe is safer due to less crime, so there is less risks when bringing up your families there. Now, areas near centers are overcrowded, therefore, it's more spacious in the rural urban fringes. Now, lower cost of land in rural urban fringe, less air pollution in rural urban fringe. Elderly will move away from the central area when they retire. So most of them tend to go to the rural urban fringes. Now, more space for your housing, access to countryside for recreation. You have more modern housing system is built within the rural urban fringe. You have larger housing and people working from home now. So because of technology, you can actually work from anywhere So if you are working from home, what is the need of staying in the city center? That will be expensive. Why not go to the rural urban fringes, which will help you to save a whole lot? Now, these are some IGCSE questions on rural urban fringe. You can just pause and read through it and see how the answers have been structured. Then I think lastly is open spaces. Now, open space are found within the city center, is found within an urban area. Now, reasons why you have open space like parks found within the urban areas, like you can see on this image, these are buildings here, these are buildings here, but this is a green space, an open space. Now, construction is not allowed. People go there for just the recreational activities and the rest. So why will this be found within a city center? Now, first is for leisure, relaxation. Two, you go for a walk there for picnic in an open space for people to play sport. It's a woodland, so you go to see nature. It helps to protect nature, both flora and fauna, which is plant and animals. Now, create gardens. It can be used for growing food, certain types of vegetables, to help clean the air, to reduce air pollution, and it helps the visual impact when built within a built up area. It makes the place very beautiful. Now, I know this video is quite long, like 16 minutes, but it really worth it. Please go through it, read through it, make your notes, check through the questions. It will help you a whole lot in preparation for your final exams. So have a nice day. Thank you.